I'm mute, and I married a CEO who can't have children. All of high society was waiting for me to become a joke, but then I got morning sickness at a gala. Edward Hawthorne's face darkened. I've never touched you. Whose baby is it? I didn't explain. I hid myself away and gave birth to fraternal twins. As the children grew to look more and more like him, Edward fell into a deep contemplation. Late one night, he pulled me into his arms. Honey, how exactly did we conceive these kids? Let's reenact it. If you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes. Before I married Edward Hawthorne, I knew he was sterile. When he was 18, he climbed a tree to get a kite for his childhood sweetheart, Karina. He lost his footing and fell. A sharp rock on the ground hit him in a critical spot. I heard his pants were soaked in blood. When the news got out, he became a laughingstock for a long time. After that, Edward's personality turned cold and withdrawn. Karina, disgusted by his physical defect, broke off their engagement. My grandfather is a master of traditional medicine, running a family wellness clinic passed down through generations. Edward's grandfather was a VIP client at the clinic and a close friend of my grandpa. Seeing that Edward was still unmarried at 25, the old Mr. Hawthorne used every trick in the book to force him to marry me. The Hawthorne family was worth billions, and Edward was their only son. And while my family came from a long line of healers, compared to the Hawthornes, we were absolutely marrying up. Besides the fact that we weren't in the same league. The most important point was that I'm mute. As soon as the news broke that Edward Hawthorne had married a mute woman, the entire elite circle was eating up the gossip. Wow. The Hawthorne heir might have problems downstairs, but with that kind of money, he could have any woman he wanted. Why marry a mute from a nobody family? I heard Edward looked furious through the whole wedding. You can tell he wasn't happy with the match his grandpa arranged. That little mute may have married into a wealthy family, but being a trophy wife is harder than it looks. I knew Edward didn't like me. And I knew my place. After the wedding, I suggested we sleep in separate rooms. We lived in the same mansion, but we were more distant than strangers. That is, until one night a year into our marriage. Edward came home from a work dinner. He'd been drinking and had gotten caught in the rain. In the middle of the night, he developed a high fever. I went to his room to take care of him. He was in a deep sleep, completely unresponsive. I took his temperature, 103.1. He couldn't take any fever reducers, so the only option was to cool him down physically. I unbuttoned his shirt. My eyes landed on his chiseled abs, and I couldn't help but swallow. Edward had a face and body that were basically perfect. He came from a great family. If it weren't for his issue and Karina breaking off the engagement, a girl like me would never have had a chance. I brought in a basin of lukewarm water and began to wipe him down with a towel. After finishing his upper body, I unbuckled his belt. My face flushed as I cleaned his lower half. To my surprise, he started to react. He looked, well, quite gifted. In that moment, my mind filled with scandalous thoughts. I wanted to know what he was like with a 103-degree fever. I also wanted to know if the herbal wellness broths I'd been making for him this past year had worked. In our year of marriage, we'd been polite and distant. We hadn't even held hands, let alone slept. A thought flashed in my mind, he can't find out. The experience wasn't that great anyway, so I decided to pretend nothing happened. I dressed him again and slipped out of his room. The next day, Edward's fever was gone. When I went downstairs for breakfast, I was so racked with guilt I couldn't even look at him. Thankfully, he seemed to have no idea what I'd done to him the night before. He was as indifferent to me as ever, as if I were just a piece of furniture in the house. I was just as indifferent back. Being unable to speak, I've always been quiet and insecure around others, used to making myself as small as possible. We finished our breakfast in total silence. He got up to leave for Hawthorne Industries. I let out a sigh of relief. What happened that night became a secret buried deep in my heart. I thought it would never come up again. But 3 months later, I was pregnant. He was supposed to be sterile, so how did I get pregnant after just one time? It seems my family's traditional recipes really worked. I didn't know how to tell Edward. I couldn't find the right opportunity. One day, Edward had a couture gown delivered to the house. I was staring at it, stunned, when his call came through. Did you get the dress? Try it on, see if it fits. You're coming with me to a dinner party tonight. He knew I couldn't speak, yet he called me about this. I had no way to refuse. In our year of marriage, he had never taken me to any social events. Besides, I feel out of place in those settings and didn't want to go myself. I was about to text him that I didn't want to go. Before I could finish typing, a message from him popped up. Grandpa specifically asked me to bring you. Get ready. If he was playing the grandpa card, I had no choice but to go. I texted back, okay. That evening, at 8 p.m., the driver arrived to pick me up. I was used to dressing simply, and the designer gown felt awkward. The moment the car door opened, I thought I saw a flicker of astonishment in Edward's eyes. After I got in, he noticed my discomfort. You look beautiful in that, he said nonchalantly. Be more confident. I wasn't sure how sincere his compliment was, but it helped ease my insecurity. This was my first time at a high society gathering. I followed behind Edward, and as soon as we entered the ballroom, all eyes were on us. My hearing is very sharp, and I could faintly hear people whispering. Oh, so that's the mute wife the Hawthorne heir married? She's pretty, I guess, but she lacks grace and class. Looks like a country bumpkin who's never seen the world. I can't believe Edward Hawthorne would actually bring her to an event like this. Isn't he embarrassed? My palms grew sweaty, and I had the urge to run and hide. But Edward suddenly squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't be scared. If anyone laughs at you, I'll buy their company tomorrow." His comment made me smile, and my posture became more poised and confident. He handed me a glass of apple juice. The moment I smelled it, I felt a wave of nausea and gagged. I covered my mouth, trying to suppress the urge to vomit. I hurried toward the restroom. Behind me, Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Jones were gossiping in hushed tones. My, is Mrs. Hawthorne having a bit of morning sickness? But isn't Edward Hawthorne sterile? How could she be pregnant? Edward's gaze turned icy. What nonsense are you two talking about? He snapped. My wife just has an upset stomach. Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Jones immediately apologized. We were just joking, Mr. Hawthorne. Please don't take it to heart. When I came out of the restroom, Edward was waiting for me in the hallway. Since you're not feeling well, I'll take you home, he said. If you don't want to attend events like this in the future, you can just say no. I nodded and went home with him. Edward called the family doctor to check on me. I waved my hand, trying to signal that I was fine. I went back to my room to rest and noticed the pregnancy test I'd left on the bathroom counter was gone. I rushed downstairs to ask our housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, if she'd seen it. As I came down the spiral staircase, I ran right into Edward. In his hand was the missing pregnancy test. In my room, Edward's face was grim. Mia, are you pregnant? He asked. It was no use hiding it anymore. I nodded. His expression grew darker. I've never touched you. Whose baby is it? He had never touched me, but I had touched him. I remained silent. I didn't know where to begin. I couldn't possibly confess that 3 months ago, while he was passed out with a fever, I had forced myself on him. It wasn't something to be proud of. I couldn't bring myself to say it. Besides, I hadn't gotten his consent. Even though we were legally married, I had still violated his will. It was my fault. It was a moment of weakness, an act of pure lust. I was guilty. I made the sign for I'm sorry to him. His face grew even darker. He must have misunderstood, thinking I was admitting to having another man. He was quiet for a long moment before asking, "Are you planning on keeping this baby?" I had already been to the doctor and found out I was having twins. The doctor said they were perfectly healthy. I nodded. Yes, I was going to keep them. Edward's eyes were red, as if he were suppressing a deep well of anger. He thought for a moment, then said in a cold voice, I respect your choice. However, I'm not generous enough to raise another man's children. I'll send you abroad to have the baby. After the children are born, we'll get a divorce. He mentioned divorce. Maybe it wasn't just because he thought I was pregnant with someone else's child. It was because he never liked me in the first place and wasn't happy with the marriage his grandfather had arranged. The pregnancy was just a convenient excuse for him to finally bring it up. Shaking off my thoughts, I nodded. If he still insisted on a divorce then, I could let him go and give him his freedom. A flicker of disappointment crossed Edward's eyes. I'll keep this from Grandpa for now. I'll tell everyone I sent you abroad for vocal cord treatment. I gave him an okay sign. He stood up and left my room. Edward kept my pregnancy a secret. He sent me overseas, setting me up in a villa. In addition to 3 maids to care for me, he hired a driver and 2 private doctors. One doctor was for my prenatal health, and the other was to help me with my vocal therapy. He also gave me a credit card with no spending limit. He was, in his own way, taking very good care of me. I realized then that he was a fundamentally kind and decent man. Even believing his wife had cheated on him and was carrying another man's child, he still treated me with consideration. Perhaps it was because he didn't love me that he could be so magnanimous. Or perhaps, because I had agreed to the divorce without a fight, this was his way of compensating me. A month later, he flew in and moved into the villa. I'm here on business, he explained flatly. I hate hotels. Edward had always been busy. In the past, whenever he traveled for work, he would book the first flight back the moment he was finished. But this time, he stayed at the villa for 3 days. During the day, he managed company affairs from his phone and laptop. After he finished his work, he asked me casually, I was thinking of going shopping. Want to come? I have social anxiety, so I usually just write a list for the maids or order things online. I avoid crowded places like shopping malls and restaurants, afraid that people won't understand my sign language and will make fun of me. Seeing my hesitation, he changed his approach. We could go to the supermarket, get something to eat, see a movie, walk in the park, or visit an art gallery. Just don't stay cooped up in the villa all day. You need to get out more. So that was his real reason. He was trying to get me to go out with him. I signed to him, can we go to the supermarket? He nodded. Sure. Going out with Edward gave me a huge sense of security. Because he understood all of my signs, he could be my bridge to the rest of the world. After the supermarket, we were at a restaurant waiting for our food. I signed to him, Edward, how do you understand all of my signs? He handed me my juice. Because I learned. No wonder he was so fluent. I took a sip of the juice, it was my favorite flavor. When did you learn? He looked straight at me. 5 years ago. I remembered the first time we met. It was 5 years ago. I had gone to the aquarium by myself. The place was enormous and packed with people, but the signs were confusing. I was exhausted and couldn't find the exit. When I finally worked up the courage to ask someone for directions using sign language, a few people started laughing at me. Are you mute? Why would a mute person come to the aquarium alone? Are you directing traffic? That's hilarious. Not everyone understands sign language, you know. Next time, you should just tape a sign to your forehead that says mute. The little mute is actually kinda pretty. Call me Big Brother, and I'll show you the way out. I dropped my hands, dejected, and turned to flee, fighting back tears. That's when Edward pushed through the crowd and called out to me. Are you looking for the exit? I can show you. In that moment, I memorized the face of the kind stranger who helped me. He walked me all the way to the aquarium exit and watched me get into a cab. A year and a half ago, when Mr. Hawthorne said he wanted to introduce me to his grandson, I had no interest in marrying into a wealthy family. But when I saw Edward, I recognized him as the person who had helped me that day. So, I agreed to the marriage. I never knew if Edward recognized me. He never mentioned it after we were married. I figured it had been too long, and he had forgotten. But now, he was telling me he had learned sign language 5 years ago. Could that really be a coincidence? After Edward returned to the States, he came back to visit a month later. When I saw him at the villa, I signed, "Here on business again and can't stand the hotels?" He nodded. Yep. I didn't call him out on it. Before he arrived, I had been on the phone with Mr. Hawthorne, who told me Edward was coming to spend the weekend with me. That weekend, Edward took me to an aquarium. This one wasn't very crowded, but he still held my hand tightly, as if he were afraid I'd get lost. As we passed the exit, he pointed to the sign. "This is the exit," he said. "Remember it." I froze. So, he did remember our first meeting 5 years ago. I went to the restroom, and Edward waited for me outside. When I came out, I saw him talking to a woman from a distance. If I wasn't mistaken, it was Karina. I only recognized her because I had once seen his graduation photo in his study. Karina was standing right in front of him. Karina was here, too, and just happened to be at the aquarium. I didn't think it was a coincidence. I stayed in the restroom for a little while longer before coming out. Karina left first, and afterward, Edward seemed distracted, like his soul had gone with her. The day after our aquarium trip, Edward flew back home. I received a photo from an unknown number. It was a picture of Edward sleeping in his first-class seat. From the angle, it was clear the person who took it was sitting right next to him. I searched the number on a messaging app and saw the profile picture was of Karina. It was her. The photo sent my mind racing. I guessed that Karina and Edward had flown back together. Maybe Edward's trip here was just to pick her up. And to satisfy his grandfather, he had stopped by to see me. And I had almost been moved by his gestures. After Edward went back, I heard from a mutual friend, Jessica, that she'd seen Edward and Karina having coffee together while she was out shopping. She even sent me a picture. Jessica texted, "Mia, if you don't come back soon, Karina is going to steal Edward from you." I stared at the message, stunned. It only confirmed my suspicions that Edward wanted a divorce because he was still in love with Karina. They had history. If Karina really wanted him back, I didn't stand a chance. When I was 8 months pregnant, Edward came to visit again. That evening, as we were walking in the garden, he stopped and asked me, "Mia, tell me who the baby's father is." I signed, half joking and half testing him, "The father is you." Edward let out a bitter laugh. "What, did I get you pregnant with my mind?" For a split second, I wanted to tell him the truth. But I held back. If he knew that I had taken advantage of him while he was unconscious, he would definitely hate me. I didn't want to ruin the image he had of me. I didn't want him to hate me. The next day, he took me shopping for baby clothes and supplies. He picked things out so carefully. Again, I felt the urge to confess. I was just about to make the sign when his phone rang. I glanced over and saw the caller ID, Karina. He walked away to take the call. Watching him from a distance, I could tell he was arguing with her. They were having a heated disagreement over the phone. That was something I could only dream of. My vocal therapy hadn't been going well. The doctor said it was a slow process. Edward deserved a healthy partner, someone who could talk to him, flirt with him, someone who could even argue with him and respond to every word. It was such a simple thing, but I couldn't do it. My insecurity flared up, and the courage I'd mustered to tell him the truth was washed away by that phone call. When he came back, he asked, "What were you about to say?" I shook my head and signed, "Nothing." Edward went to pay for the baby items we'd selected. The whole time, I avoided making eye contact with him. When he spoke to me, I just gave a detached nod or shake of my head, not even bothering to sign much. After we got home, I went to my room and locked the door. Thinking about him on the phone with Karina made my heart ache and my eyes sting. A few moments later, Edward knocked on the door. "Mia, open up." I opened it and signed, what is it? He looked into my eyes. Have you been crying? I shook my head, denying it. No. He pressed on. Did that phone call upset you? I shook my head again. I'm not upset. I'm just a little tired. No, I know you're upset. You can express it when you're unhappy. Don't bottle it up, and don't give me the silent treatment. Words are just one way to communicate. There are other ways. He took out his phone and pulled up his call history. Then he tapped on Karina's new number. A prompt appeared on the screen, add to block list. He took my hand and placed it on the screen. Can you block her for me? I understood what he was doing. He was teaching me that if I was jealous, I should let it out instead of keeping it inside. I tapped add to block list. It turned out Karina's old number had been in his block list for a long time. She had used a new number to call him. After personally blocking her new number, I felt a weight lift off my chest. Edward pulled me into his arms and whispered, "If I ever make you unhappy again, you can just bite me, okay? Just let me know how you're feeling." Just a few months ago, he'd been talking about divorcing me after the baby was born. But his actions lately didn't seem like those of a man who wanted a divorce. It seemed like he wanted to build a life with me. In that moment, I wanted to hug him. I thought about it, then raised my arms and hugged him back. A smile spread across his lips as he stroked my back. If you can't express your feelings with words, then from now on, use your actions to show me, okay? Okay. Lesson learned. Finally, the day came when I went into labor. As soon as Edward got the news, he dropped everything, bought a ticket for the next flight, and flew over. I safely delivered a healthy pair of fraternal twins at the hospital. The babies were so new you couldn't tell who they looked like yet. I handed Edward a divorce agreement I had prepared earlier. Deep down, I didn't want a divorce. The papers were a test. The agreement stated that I would voluntarily give up any claim to the Hawthorne family fortune. I signed a long message to him. Didn't you say we would get a divorce after the children were born? I've drawn up the papers. If everything looks good to you, you can sign. He read through the agreement, his eyes turning red. You haven't even recovered from childbirth and you're already trying to divorce me? What, is the baby daddy getting impatient? I waved my hands. It has nothing to do with him. I just want to give you your freedom. You deserve someone better. But instead, he tore the divorce agreement to shreds. We're not getting divorced, he said seriously. Not getting divorced? He continued, if you think I'm going to step aside so you can be with that deadbeat, you're mistaken. I've thought about it. Since I can't have children of my own, I'd have to adopt sooner or later. Instead of adopting a stranger's kids, I'd rather raise yours. I was stunned. Who was it that, just a few months ago, had a meltdown when he heard I was pregnant and said, I'm not generous enough to raise another man's children? How did he talk himself into this? Seeing my lack of response, he said sourly, what, is that loser waiting for me to get out of the way? He hasn't even come to see you once during your pregnancy. He's obviously a scumbag. Is a guy like that worth giving up the life you have now? I can let the past go. I can accept these 2 children and raise them as my own. But from now on, you have to be a good wife to me. No more seeing other men on the side. I hadn't said a word, and he'd gone on this whole tangent. When I still didn't respond, his eyes darted around, trying to guess what I was thinking. He lowered his voice. I'll work on myself, keep taking the herbal supplements. And if that really doesn't work, I can buy you. I almost burst out laughing. What on earth was going through his mind? Was his grandfather pressuring him to stay married to me? I signed, okay, no divorce. But my vocal therapy is slow. I won't be able to speak anytime soon. You can't look down on me. I have never looked down on you, he said honestly. I have my own flaws. Please don't look down on me, okay? He still didn't know that he was perfectly capable of having children. The twins were healthy, and we conceived on the first try. His fertility was more than fine. I nodded and signed, I won't. We won't look down on each other. Edward's ears suddenly turned red, and he looked like he wanted to say something. Mia, actually, I waited for him to continue. I think I might, he started, but then swallowed his words. It's nothing. You just focus on your recovery. We can talk about it later. After I recovered from childbirth, Edward brought me and the babies home. He told Mr. Hawthorne that they were adopted. To my surprise, Mr. Hawthorne didn't question it. He just sighed. Fine. The Hawthorne line can't end here. Adopted children are still children. Then he seemed to console himself. Well, look at me, a great-grandfather now. This is wonderful news, truly wonderful. It seemed Edward's magnanimity was inherited from his grandfather. Mr. Hawthorne personally named the 2 children. The boy was named Aiden, nicknamed Adie. The girl was named Olivia, nicknamed Livy. Mr. Hawthorne shared the good news with my grandfather. Old friend, you're a great-grandfather. Mia and Edward adopted twins. My grandpa chuckled. I heard from Mia. This calls for a celebration. The 2 of them shared a pot of herbal wine to celebrate. Mr. Hawthorne adored Aiden and Livy. He had them moved into the old Hawthorne estate, hiring 4 nannies to look after them. I, on the other hand, started working at my grandfather's wellness clinic. For now, I was in charge of preparing herbal formulas in the pharmacy, a job that didn't require talking and suited me perfectly. Every day at 5 p.m., Edward would pick me up from work, and we'd go to the estate to see Aiden and Livy. On weekends, we would bring the kids home to stay with us. I brought home a lot of wellness broths from the clinic. I made them for Edward every day to help him build up his strength. He was very cooperative, always finishing every last drop. One night, I went downstairs for a glass of water. Edward was also in the kitchen. After we finished our water and were about to head upstairs, he suddenly pulled me into his arms. Honey, he said meaningfully, married couples sleeping in separate rooms is bad for the relationship. I was the one who had suggested separate rooms. Was he trying to move in with me to work on our relationship? But I wasn't mentally prepared for that. Seeing my silence, he didn't push it. But he didn't let me go, either. He leaned down and kissed me gently, as if I were a fragile treasure. As his kiss deepened, the feeling of my heart fluttering was like a rapidly growing vine, winding its way around both of us, blooming in unseen corners. I don't know how long it lasted, but he suddenly got a nosebleed. I turned on the light and grabbed a tissue to help him. Looks like I could probably cut back on the wellness broths. I didn't want to overdo it. Edward went to his room to take a cold shower. The next morning, I went downstairs for breakfast and saw him putting a bedsheet into the washing machine. That was usually a job for Mrs. Gable. He never did his own laundry. I glanced at him, and his ears immediately turned bright red as he avoided my gaze. On the way to work, he whispered, I think I can probably stop drinking those broths now. Was he completely better? I had a sudden urge to test that theory myself. Ahem, lust is a dangerous thing. I immediately shut down that thought. Before I knew it, it was Mr. Hawthorne's birthday. The party was held at a hotel owned by Hawthorne Industries. Karina's family had business dealings with the Hawthornes, so they received an invitation. I saw Karina at the party. 4 years ago, the Hawthornes and her family had planned for them to marry. After Karina broke off the engagement, she quickly married one of Edward's best friends from college. I heard she got divorced a year ago. When I went to the restroom, Karina followed me in and started touching up her lipstick in the mirror. She shot me a sideways glance. Mia, you've got some nerve. Cheating on him is one thing, but to actually have some other man's baby and pass it off as a Hawthorne? I remained silent. She chuckled. Oh, right, I forgot you're a mute. You can't talk. If I hadn't broken off the engagement with Edward, you never would have had the chance to marry into this family. Now that I'm divorced, what do you think would happen if I went after Edward? Do you think he'd dump you for me? You know how powerful a first love can be. I ignored her. After I finished and was washing my hands, she was still standing there. Mia, I may be divorced, but at least I'm a whole person. Not like you. You can't even speak. It must be exhausting for Edward to be with you, right? He hates the silent treatment more than anything. When we used to fight, if I ignored him for more than 3 hours, he would completely break down. He'd do anything to get me to talk to him again. Spending the rest of his life with a mute woman must feel like constant silent treatment. He'll go insane. Edward had told me not to give him the silent treatment. So that wasn't just a casual remark. I typed a message on my phone and held it up for her to see. Are you done? You look ridiculous when you're having a meltdown. Karina's eyes widened. How dare you mock me? Fine. Just you wait. I'm going to humiliate you in front of Mr. Hawthorne. With that, she stormed off. When I came out of the restroom, Edward was waiting for me in the hallway. As I approached, he held out his hand. I saw Karina come out of there just now. What did she say to you? I took out my phone and played the recording I had made. It started with Karina's voice saying, "Oh, right, I forgot you're a mute. You can't talk," followed by, "If I hadn't broken off the engagement with Edward, you never would have had the chance to marry into this family." Edward listened in silence, his expression growing darker by the second. I was the one who didn't want the arranged marriage, he explained. She was never the one that got away. You are. From the moment I first saw you at the aquarium 5 years ago, I've been in love with you. I knew you had social anxiety, and with my own issues, I could only watch you from a distance. My grandfather setting us up wasn't because he's close with your grandpa. It was because he knew I'd been secretly in love with you for years. I was the one who asked to marry you. So that was the truth? All this time, I had completely misunderstood him. When I first married into the Hawthorne family, I thought he disliked me and was indifferent. In reality, he liked me too much, but his own insecurities held him back. So he never dared to cross that line. I signed. Then what happened with you and Karina at the aquarium? The aquarium? He thought for a moment. You mean when we were overseas? That was just a coincidence. She saw us together and came over to talk to me while you were in the restroom. She asked me to unblock her. I refused. And that time I took you shopping for baby supplies, she called me from an unknown number, begging me to get back together with her. She threatened to tell my grandfather about your pregnancy if I didn't. That's what we were arguing about. Her threats didn't work on me. We never even dated. We were just acquaintances. And the tree climbing story, I was just a kid trying to pick some wild fruit, not getting her a kite. It's terrifying how rumors can twist the truth. I still had one more question. I pulled out my phone and showed him the pictures Karina and Jessica had sent me. The first was the photo from the first-class cabin. Karina wasn't on that flight, Edward explained. The passenger in the seat next to me took that picture sneakily. That person knew Karina and sent it to her. The second was the photo from the coffee shop. Edward shook his head. I never had coffee with her. That photo is photoshopped. Jessica and Karina were best friends in college. It's obvious what they were trying to do. So Karina had paid Jessica to try and drive a wedge between us. He had been so honest with me. It was my turn to do the same. Just then, the estate's butler walked over. Sir, madam, Miss Karina is causing a scene. Mr. Hawthorne requests your presence in the ballroom. Edward and I exchanged a look and hurried toward the party. It turned out Karina had brought a stack of secretly taken photos. The pictures showed me with a large baby bump during my time abroad. While Edward and I were gone, Karina had gone to Mr. Hawthorne. Grandpa Hawthorne, she'd said, Mia lied to you. She and Edward didn't adopt those children. Those 2 kids are Mia's biological children. She was cheating on him with some other man. The entire Hawthorne family has been deceived. The crowd erupted in murmurs. No way. That's insane. So that's why she disappeared for half a year. She went abroad to have a baby. She has some serious nerve, trying to pass off another man's kids as Hawthorne's. And Edward Hawthorne is just letting her? Raising another man's children? Mr. Hawthorne's face was dark with anger. What other man? He boomed. These children are Edward and Mia's biological children. My grandson's condition was cured a long time ago. Karina shook her head. Impossible. Didn't the doctors say he could never have children of his own? How could he be cured? Karina's mother rushed to cover her mouth, shooting her a desperate look. Karina, stop it. Not another word. But Karina pushed her away, shouting, Grandpa Hawthorne, there's a limit to how much you can protect her. The Hawthorne fortune is huge. You can't just let anyone inherit it. Smack. Karina's father slapped her across the face. Shut up. He roared. He turned to Mr. Hawthorne with an apologetic smile. Mr. Hawthorne, my daughter has lost her mind. I'll take her home and discipline her properly. Please don't let this bother you. Mr. Hawthorne's face was like stone. Mr. Sterling, all business dealings between the Hawthorne and Sterling families are terminated as of today. From now on, we are no longer partners. We are competitors. Security. Throw the Sterlings out. At Mr. Hawthorne's command, guards swarmed in and dragged Karina and her parents out of the hotel. Karina never imagined that Mr. Hawthorne would defend me so unconditionally. Edward and I arrived late to the scene. I was about to explain when Mr. Hawthorne announced to the room, these two children are Edward and Mia's, born to them. Edward is fully recovered. If I hear anyone else spreading baseless rumors, they will be making an enemy of the Hawthorne family. The room fell silent. Mr. Hawthorne then presented a stunning imperial jade bracelet and had Edward put it on my wrist. That finally seemed to convince everyone. That bracelet is priceless. It's the Hawthorne family heirloom, passed down to the lady of the house. If those children weren't Edward's, there's no way Mr. Hawthorne would give Mia the family heirloom. My own grandfather pulled me aside. Mia, he said, before the party, I told your Grandpa Hawthorne that the children were yours and Edward's. After I returned home, my grandfather had suspected the children were mine. He had asked me who the father was. I told him it was Edward. He breathed a sigh of relief at the time and didn't press for details. No wonder Mr. Hawthorne had been so certain when he announced that Edward was cured. Now, the only person left in the dark was Edward himself. He thought his grandfather was just trying to protect his dignity in front of everyone. I decided I needed to find the right time to tell him the truth. The Hawthornes moved against the Sterlings, and their company quickly went bankrupt. Karina was no longer a wealthy heiress. To make quick money, she became an escort. She was later arrested in a police raid, and the news destroyed her reputation completely. Aidan and Livy started to grow into their features. Livy looked like me, but Aidan looked more and more like Edward every day. Mr. Hawthorne would often pull out old photos of Edward as a child and compare them to Aidan. Ha ha ha. They're practically identical. He would roar with laughter. Edward also noticed the resemblance. He couldn't figure it out. One night, after his shower, he came into my room. Honey, are Aidan and Livy really mine? I nodded. Edward was ecstatic, but then he hesitated. But we never. Blushing, I pointed to the bathroom and made an excuse. The water's ready. I'm going to take a shower. Even though I was prepared, I still couldn't bring myself to say it. I didn't know how to explain. When I came out of the shower, Edward was still there. Not only that, he was lying on my bed with the top 3 buttons of his shirt undone. Honey, I'm sleeping in here tonight. Now that I knew I was the one he'd wanted all along, that our marriage was something he had schemed for, what reason was there for us to sleep in separate rooms? I climbed into bed and slipped under the covers. He wrapped his arms around me, inhaling my scent. Honey, you smell so good. My ears burned, but I didn't pull away. I let him hold me. Soon, just holding me wasn't enough. He started kissing me cautiously. When I didn't resist, he grew bolder. He began to conquer me, step by step. Honey, how did we conceive the kids? Let's reenact it. If you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes. I'm mute. How could I say anything? But Edward had told me that if I couldn't express my emotions with words, I should use my body. I wrapped my arms around his neck. With my body language, I told him I was willing. He asked in a low, husky voice, "That last time, was it when I had the fever, and you took the lead?" I covered his mouth with mine, stopping him from saying any more. My forwardness was like a spark that lit a fire in his heart. He responded with a burning passion. The gentle restraint he'd shown before was instantly replaced by a surging wave of possessiveness. He kissed me deeply and fiercely, as if trying to merge me into his very bones. The moonlight outside the window slowly faded. By the time the morning sun peeked through the curtains, my body was completely limp. I didn't even have the strength to lift my hand. He, however, was still full of energy, already planning his next move. That time when he had a fever was his first time, which is why the experience wasn't great. This night completely shattered my previous perceptions. The results of my test were very satisfactory. Edward told me that he was semi-conscious during the fever. He said he often dreamed about me, so he thought that time was just another dream, not something that had actually happened. After that night, I dedicated myself to my vocal therapy. My doctor created a 2-year treatment plan designed to help me speak again. I couldn't wait for that day to come. Once Edward got a taste of it, he couldn't get enough. Every day after I came home from the clinic, I had to work overtime with him. One night, Edward pulled me into his arms. "Honey, do what you did to me last time, all over again." Remembering that night made my cheeks flush. I shook my head and signed, "No, I'm tired from work today." "Then just lie there," he said tenderly. "I'll give you a shoulder rub." I lay on my stomach, and he started massaging my shoulders. It felt so good I was about to fall asleep. Seeing how seriously he was working, I thought to myself, well, I'm not that tired. If I don't have to do any of the work, I guess it's fine. The next moment, he stopped massaging me. He turned me over and asked in surprise, "Honey, did you just say something?" Did I? No, I hadn't. Edward's gaze deepened as he seemed to realize I hadn't opened my mouth. In the darkness, the pale moonlight illuminated my face. Edward started teasing me, pushing harder while watching my reaction, as if trying to get a response out of me. My eyes misted over. I was silent, like a trapped animal, unable to make a sound, but tears welled up and spilled over. He stopped, kissing them away. "What's wrong? You don't like it?" That wasn't it. I loved it. I loved it so much that I couldn't control the tears. A small smile played on his lips. He leaned down and whispered in my ear, "Honey, I heard what your heart was saying. It said you love this."